Sienna Hale didn't look up when the boardroom door opened. She didn't need to. No one ever interrupted her mid-pitch. Not her assistants. Not her team. Not even the C-suite vultures who flinched under her stare but clung to her empire like barnacles on a ship they didn't build. She was 3 slides into a quarterly forecast that could determine whether Hale Industries acquired their closest rival or left them bleeding in the dust, and the only sound in the room had been her voice, measured, cold, decisive until now. The door creaked wider. Leather chairs shifted. A throat cleared. Then, is this where the bathrooms are? That voice didn't belong. It wasn't clipped or deferential or fake confident like everyone else who stepped foot on the 43rd floor. It was raw, young, tired. Sienna blinked once, slowly, then looked up. The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. 12 executives turned to stare at the figure in the doorway. She was out of place in every way. The girl looked like she'd come in from a different world entirely. Faded black hoodie. Scuffed sneakers that might have been white once. Hair tied back in a messy knot. No makeup. No badge. No apology. She stood just inside the doorway, blinking against the light, and scanned the room like she wasn't even slightly intimidated by the multi-billion-dollar empire she'd just barged into. Her eyes found Sienna's. Green. Unflinching. Sienna tilted her head slightly, lips parting. "Excuse me," she said, ice threading through every syllable. "Oh, wow." "Yeah, no, definitely not the bathroom," the girl said, half laughing but not embarrassed. "Sorry." Elevator said this floor had public access. I guess it lied. The room didn't breathe. "Security," Sienna said without looking away from her. The girl's eyebrows lifted like she'd expected that. "Cool. I'm going." She turned to leave. No fuss, no panic, but 2 uniformed guards were already approaching from the hallway behind her. One reached for her arm. "Don't touch me," she snapped, loud enough to make one of the executives flinch. The guards hesitated. Sienna narrowed her eyes. "Escort her out," she said. "Now." The girl didn't resist. She gave Sienna one last look. Not scared. Not angry. Something else. Like she'd seen something in Sienna and dismissed it. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was deafening. Someone coughed. Sienna turned back to her presentation. "Slide 4, she said coolly. We were discussing projected margins post-acquisition. But her voice wasn't as even as it had been. And later, after the meeting, after the contracts, after the analysts left, she found herself staring at the security footage of the girl walking away down the hall. Who the hell was she? And why couldn't Sienna stop thinking about her? The next morning, she did something uncharacteristic. She called building security. "That girl from yesterday," she said. "Where did she go after you removed her?" There was a pause. "She didn't leave the building, ma'am," said the guard. "She went down to the garage. She's been sleeping in her car. For weeks, actually." Sienna's blood went cold. "She's living here? We didn't want to bother you, Miss Hale." It didn't seem urgent. Sienna hung up without responding. She sat at her desk for nearly 10 minutes, staring at her reflection in the black screen of her monitor. That girl hadn't belonged in her boardroom, but somehow she'd fit. Not in the way her executives did. In the way a match fits a fuse. Against her better judgment, Sienna sent a message to her executive assistant. "Find her. Bring her to me." Less than 2 hours later, the girl was standing in front of her again, this time in Sienna's personal office, facing a window that overlooked the skyline. Still in the same hoodie. Still defiant. Still not apologizing. "I don't want a handout," she said before Sienna could even speak. "You asked me here. Say what you want to say." Sienna folded her hands. "You want a job?" The girl blinked. "What?" "Mailroom. Minimum wage. You start tomorrow. If you're late, you're out. If you talk back, you're out. If I regret this, you're out." "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm curious," Sienna said. "And I hate being curious." The girl stared at her for a long time. Then Rory. "My name is Rory Jones. Don't make me regret this, Ms. Jones." "Then don't look for reasons to," Rory replied and walked out. And for the first time in Sienna's career, she found herself watching someone leave and hoping they'd come back. Rory's first morning at Hale Industries felt like walking into a museum where everything was made of glass and judgment. The lobby alone was enough to make her feel like she'd stepped onto another planet. Towering ceilings, cold marble floors, glowing touchscreens that responded faster than her brain could process, and people who all moved like they had somewhere important to be, somewhere exclusive, somewhere she definitely didn't belong. No one looked at her. Not really. A few glanced, then quickly looked away, like she might be contagious. The badge clipped to her hoodie marked her as mailroom staff, bottom rung, invisible, tolerated but never acknowledged. The only reason she was even in the building at all was because the woman on the top floor had decided, for reasons Rory still didn't understand, that she was worth a second look. That thought made her walk a little straighter. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe she wasn't polished or pedigreed or even particularly polite. But she wasn't going to be small. Not for them. The mailroom was buried 2 levels below the lobby, down a quiet hallway that smelled like toner and cardboard. The supervisor, a man named Mitch with a stained tie and the permanent look of someone just barely holding on, handed her a cart, a scanner, and a printed sheet of the morning's deliveries. "Don't talk to anyone unless they talk to you," he said without meeting her eyes. "Don't go near executive floors unless you're specifically sent. Don't touch anything with a red tag. Don't get lost. Don't screw up." "You really know how to inspire confidence," Rory muttered. He looked up surprised. "What?" "Nothing." She took the cart and the list, scanned the first package, and rolled into the maze of corridors that made up Hale Industries. By noon, she delivered 17 boxes, climbed 4 sets of stairs, accidentally knocked over a tray of coffees and marketing, and been called a new girl 3 different times. She also managed to get lost twice, nearly walked into the wrong conference room again, and realized far too late that her cart squeaked loud enough to make everyone within a 20-foot radius turn and stare. But she kept going, because it beat sleeping in her car, and because, as much as she didn't want to admit it, part of her wanted to see her again. Sienna Hale, Ice Queen, Empire Builder. The woman who looked at her like she was a glitch in the system, and then offered her a job anyway. Rory didn't understand it, didn't trust it, but couldn't stop thinking about it either. By late afternoon, she found herself on the 39th floor, waiting for the elevator to take her back down. The floor was quieter here, sleeker, glass offices and silence. She adjusted a package on her cart and heard footsteps approaching. Heels. Sharp. Rhythmic. And then her. Sienna. In a tailored black suit, eyes on her phone, walking with that same unbothered grace she'd had in the boardroom. Rory froze. Her heart did something stupid. Sienna looked up. Their eyes met. A beat passed. Then another. Rory didn't look away. Sienna didn't either. "Lost again, Miss Jones," she said coolly.
"No," Rory said.
"I actually work here now. Remember? So I've been told. Planning on pretending I'm not real?" "You're not a hallucination," Sienna said. "Unfortunately."
"Wow."
That almost sounded like a joke. "Don't get used to it. Wasn't planning on it." Sienna's eyes dropped briefly to the package on the cart. "You're delivering that to legal?" "Apparently. They'll ignore you. They always do." "Good to know." She waited for Sienna to say something else.
She didn't.
Instead, the CEO turned and walked toward the elevator. Rory sighed and turned back toward her route until Sienna spoke again. "You've made a few enemies already." Rory blinked. "What?" "HR called this morning. Someone in marketing complained about you being abrupt." "I knocked over a tray of coffee," Rory admitted. "Didn't apologize. It wasn't my fault, but still." "That's not the part they mentioned." "Let me guess. My attitude, your posture, your silence, your refusal to grovel." Rory stared. "You really hire people who grovel?" "I usually don't hire people at all," Sienna said.
"But yes."
"Most of them learn quickly that bending keeps you from breaking." "That's bleak. That's reality." "Not mine," Rory said. Sienna tilted her head.
"No."
"I don't suppose it is." "Why me?" Rory asked suddenly. Out of everyone you could have rescued or ignored, you chose me. Why? Sienna didn't answer right away. The elevator dinged behind her. Because you walked into my space like you didn't care who I was, she said finally. And I hadn't seen that in a very long time. Then she stepped into the elevator.
The doors closed.
Rory exhaled. Her pulse was still racing. What the hell was she getting into? Over the next week, things didn't get easier, but they got sharper. People whispered when she walked by. Some smirked. Others looked annoyed. A few stared like they were trying to figure out what she was. No one invited her to lunch. No one helped when she dropped an armful of envelopes. But Rory didn't need their kindness. She'd survived worse. She worked hard, efficient, focused. The mailroom supervisor grudgingly admitted she was the fastest new hire they'd had in years. On Friday afternoon, she was sent to the top floor. Executive suite. Sienna's domain. Her stomach twisted. The receptionist barely looked at her. Leave it there, she said, pointing to the counter. Rory did. But before she could turn to leave, a voice came from the hallway. Jones. She turned. Sienna stood in her office doorway. Arms crossed. Come in. Rory hesitated. Then followed. The office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Custom bookshelves. Minimalist art that probably cost more than a year of rent, if Rory had rent. Sienna gestured to a chair. Sit. I thought I wasn't supposed to be up here. You're not. Sit anyway. Rory sat. Slowly.
Cautiously.
You've made an impression. Let me guess. A bad one. Not entirely, Sienna said. But your presence unsettles people. Sorry, Rory said flatly. Should I wear a name tag that says not contagious? You don't have to do anything except your job. But I'm curious what your endgame is. Rory frowned. Endgame? You didn't strike me as someone who wanted to stay invisible. I just want a paycheck. Do you? Sienna asked. Because you look at people like you're measuring them, judging them. Maybe I am. Why? Rory looked at her. Because they're judging me, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see it. Sienna's gaze didn't waver.
And me?
What do you see when you look at me? Power, Rory said. And exhaustion. That made Sienna pause. Is that right? You look like you built something big enough to live inside. But I'm not sure you ever leave it. Another pause. Then, you're not wrong. Didn't think I was. Sienna leaned forward slightly. Be careful, Rory. This place doesn't like people who speak truth without permission. Then maybe it needs to hear it more. Sienna smiled. Just barely. Get back to work. Rory stood. Yes, ma'am. And as she left the office, she felt Sienna's eyes on her back, burning, calculating, curious. The fluorescent lights in the mailroom buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sterile, off-white glow that made Rory's eyes ache by mid-afternoon. She'd memorized every corner of this basement by now. The stacks of packages, the quiet whir of the label printer, the smell of cardboard and stale coffee. It was lonely work, repetitive, mechanical. But it was work. And for the first time in months, she had a place to be. A key card. A locker. A name on a schedule. She was still sleeping in her car. She hadn't accepted the housing voucher HR had mumbled about after her second day, but she wasn't hungry. She wasn't invisible. And every time she rolled that squeaky cart into the higher floors, people noticed her. Not kindly, not warmly, but noticed. That was something. She didn't need their acceptance. But damn, it felt good to be undeniable. Still, she knew this wouldn't last forever if she didn't play it smart. Sienna Hale hadn't hired her out of generosity. That much was obvious.
Curiosity, maybe.
Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. Impulse. But Rory wasn't naive. Whatever game had started between them, it could end the second Rory stopped being interesting. Or useful. She wasn't going to let that happen. Which is why, when her card assignment unexpectedly included a delivery to Sienna's office just after 7 p.m., long after most of the building had emptied. Rory hesitated. She could have left it with the receptionist. She could have sent a message saying she'd drop it off in the morning. But instead, she scanned the label again, took a breath, and walked to the elevator. The top floor was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that felt like it had teeth. Sienna's door was open a few inches, light spilling onto the marble hallway. Rory knocked once. No answer. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Sienna was standing at the far end of the office, barefoot, suit jacket draped over the back of a chair, sleeves rolled up. Her hair was down. Rory had never seen it like that. Less perfect.
Softer.
She was staring out the window, the city lights painting her face in shards of silver and gold. For a moment, Rory didn't say anything, just watched. There was something about the way Sienna stood, so still, so composed, but undeniably alone, that made Rory's chest ache in a way she didn't expect. "Delivery," she said finally. Sienna turned. Her expression flickered. Surprise, quickly masked. "You're still here." "I'm efficient. Most staff clock out at 6. Maybe I like empty buildings." "Dangerous habit," Sienna said, walking back toward her desk. Rory placed the envelope down. Their fingers didn't touch, but it felt like they could have. "You always work this late?" "Every day." "No hobbies?" "No secret double life." "This is my life." Rory tilted her head. "That sounds miserable." "It's profitable." "You think that's the same thing?" "I think most people who say it isn't have never had to choose." "And you?" "I chose a long time ago." Rory looked at her. "And has it been worth it?" Sienna didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the minibar in the corner, poured a glass of something dark and expensive-looking, and sipped it slowly. "You're not what I expected," she said after a pause. "What did you expect?" "Gratitude. Obedience. Maybe a little desperation." "You got none of that." "No," Sienna said. "I got something sharper." "You want me to change?" "No," she said, and Rory swore, her voice softened by a degree. "I want to see what happens if you don't." Rory took a step closer.
"Why?"
"What's the point of this?" "Me? Maybe I'm bored," Sienna said. "Maybe I wanted to see what happens when someone walks in who doesn't ask permission." "You sound lonely." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "Careful." "Not being rude," Rory said. "Just honest. That's what makes it dangerous." Rory leaned against the edge of the desk. "You hired me because I surprised you. That's fine. But I'm not going to play a circus act for you. I'm here to work. To survive. Maybe to learn something. If I can stomach the company." Sienna's lips twitched. "You think I'm the worst part of this place?" "I think you're the only part that's not pretending." That made something flicker in Sienna's eyes. Amusement? Interest? Whatever it was, it made Rory's pulse jump. Sienna set her glass down, stepped closer. "You think I don't notice people, don't you? You didn't even look at me when I walked into your boardroom." "And now?" Sienna asked. "Are you looking now?" "Yes," Rory said, her voice quieter. "And you're different like this." "Like what?" "Unmasked. Tired. Human." Sienna exhaled. Slow. "Most people don't like seeing that." "I'm not most people." A beat passed. Tension thickened. Something electric danced in the air between them. Charged, restrained, dangerous. Then Sienna turned away. Just enough to break it. "You should go," she said. "Long day tomorrow." Rory nodded, but didn't move. "Thanks for the job," she said finally. "I know you didn't have to." "I didn't," Sienna agreed. "But you're not the only one curious to see how this ends." Rory left. She walked back to the elevator with a strange tightness in her chest. That wasn't just a conversation. That was something else. Something shifting. And she wasn't sure if she should be excited or terrified. Rory was starting to notice the rhythm of the building, the quiet hum of the elevators in the morning, the low, tense chatter of mid-level managers by 10 a.m., the way everyone seemed to walk faster after lunch, like they were chasing something invisible. Hale Industries wasn't a place where people relaxed. It was a place where they braced themselves, where they tried not to be the one called out, the one caught slipping, the one replaced. Rory didn't belong here.
But she was still here.
And she was learning. She watched everything. Listened when people thought she wasn't paying attention. She noticed how emails traveled faster when they carried the CEO's name, how people adjusted their tone depending on who was in the room. And she saw how Sienna moved through it all like the eye of a storm, untouchable, untouched, impossible to read. Except when she looked at Rory. That was different. And Rory was trying to figure out if it scared her or thrilled her. Probably both. That week, a shipping error sent the entire legal department into a quiet panic. A confidential file meant for the boardroom had been misrouted and ended up opened on a junior associate's desk. It was traced back to the mailroom. To Rory. She hadn't touched it. She knew that. But there was no camera proof, no one willing to speak up, and in a place like this, accusations were enough to end you. Mitch, her supervisor, pulled her into the tiny, windowless storage office. "They're pissed," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "They want someone to take the fall. And you're volunteering me," Rory said flatly. "I'm saying you're new. You don't have leverage. I have integrity. That's not a currency we use here." Rory stood up straighter. "So you're asking me to admit to something I didn't do? I'm asking you to survive. There's a difference."
No.
"There's not." She walked out before he could say anything else. She didn't know where she was going until she found herself in front of Sienna's office again. She hadn't been summoned. She wasn't on the delivery list. But something in her chest pushed her forward anyway. The receptionist started to object, but Rory didn't stop. She knocked once, then opened the door. Sienna looked up from her desk. Alone. Focused. Beautiful.
"Jones," she said.
"I didn't call for you." "Good. Then you're not expecting me to beg." That got her attention. Sienna leaned back. "What happened?" Rory explained. Brief, clipped, controlled. No drama. No embellishment. Just facts. Sienna listened without interrupting. When Rory finished, she said nothing for a long moment. "Then, do you want me to fix it?" "I want you to believe me." "I do." Rory blinked. "Just like that? Just like that?" "Why?" "Because you walked in here ready to burn a bridge you don't even have yet. That's either recklessness or truth. I'm betting on truth." Rory let out a slow breath. "So what now?" "Now," Sienna said, pulling out her phone. "I make one call, and this never touches your record. Just like that. You really need to stop being surprised when I do things efficiently." Rory half smiled. "Thanks. You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not. But I don't forget when someone chooses to believe me." Sienna stood, walked to the window. The city outside was beginning to darken, buildings casting long shadows over streets that never really slept. She looked over her shoulder. "Do you always carry everything like it weighs nothing? Do you always hide everything like it's going to kill you if someone sees?" That made Sienna pause. "You don't make things easy." "Neither do you. That's why you're still here." "Is it?" Rory asked. "Because sometimes I think I'm here because you like watching me squirm." "I don't like watching anyone squirm," Sienna said. "But I do like watching you hold your ground." Rory crossed her arms. "So, this is entertainment for you?" "No," Sienna said softly. "It's intrigue." Another pause. "Then, do you like Italian?" Rory blinked. "What?"
"Food. Italian."
"There's a place."
"Quiet."
"No cameras." "Are you asking me to dinner?" "I'm asking if you're hungry. You don't invite staff to dinner." "I don't do a lot of things I've done since you walked into my boardroom." Rory stared at her. "Why?" "Because I want to see who you are when you're not defending yourself." "And you?" Rory asked. "Who are you when you're not hiding behind floor-to-ceiling glass and perfect tailoring?" Sienna's eyes darkened, but not with anger. With something else. "Maybe tonight you'll find out." Rory hesitated. "Then, okay.
"I'll go."
8 o'clock. I'll send a car." "Don't." "Excuse me? If I'm going to have dinner with you, I'm walking in on my own terms." "Fair enough." Rory turned to leave. Stopped at the door. "I do like Italian," she said without looking back. And then she was gone. Sienna stared after her, the corner of her mouth lifting in something that wasn't quite a smile, but close. This wasn't business. This wasn't protocol. This was something else. And for the first time in years, she wasn't trying to stop it. The restaurant Sienna chose was nothing like Rory expected. It wasn't sleek or towering or cold like the world Sienna had built around herself. It was quiet, tucked into the end of a cobblestone street in a part of the city Rory had never dared to explore. No name on the door, just warm light spilling through the windows and the faint smell of roasted garlic and something sweet on the air. Rory almost didn't walk in. She stood outside for a full 30 seconds, heart racing, hands stuffed into her jacket pockets. This wasn't her world. Not even close. But she had promised herself that if she got the chance, she'd show up. And tonight, Sienna had offered her one. She stepped inside. And there she was, Sienna Hale, sitting at a back table, already watching the door like she knew exactly what time Rory would arrive. She was out of uniform, no tailored suit, no heels, no polished armor. Just a dark blouse, sleeves pushed up to her elbows, a delicate gold chain around her throat. She looked softer, but no less dangerous. Rory crossed the room slowly. This place has no menu. That's the point, Sienna said. They make what they feel like making. You have to trust them. And you do. Every time. Rory slid into the seat across from her. The table was too small. Their knees nearly brushed. Neither of them moved. Why here? Rory asked. Because no one comes here with expectations. Except maybe you. Tonight, I'm not the CEO. What are you then? I'm trying to find out. A server appeared. No notepad. No introductions. He just nodded at Sienna, poured them each a glass of wine, and disappeared. Rory raised an eyebrow. Do you own this place?
No.
But I've invested. Of course you have. Would it bother you if I said I picked this place so you'd feel less observed? Rory stared at her. I've been observed my whole life. Doesn't mean I enjoy it. Then maybe I picked it so I'd feel less observed. Why would you care? Because I'm not used to being looked at the way you look at me. Rory blinked. How do I look at you? Like you're trying to decide if I'm real. And, still undecided, Rory said. Sienna almost smiled. Almost. The food arrived in waves. Pasta in delicate sauce. Bread warm from the oven. Wine that made Rory's cheeks flush and her tongue loosen. They talked. Not about Hale Industries. Not about packages or scandals or boardroom disasters. About music. About cities they hated. About how Rory used to write poetry in high school and how Sienna once wanted to be an architect before the world taught her that success meant building things faster, not better. There was laughter. Real, unfiltered laughter. Sienna's, low and rare and addictive. Rory's, freer than it had been in months. And then dessert came, a plate of dark chocolate and raspberries, and Sienna said something Rory didn't expect. I haven't had dinner with someone like this in years. Like what? Equal. The word hit Rory like a spark to dry kindling. She set her fork down. Is that what this is? Equality. Isn't it? I don't know, Rory said. I feel like I'm constantly trying to keep up. You're not behind me, Rory. You're just standing in a different place. A lower place. A place I can see from. Rory leaned forward. Why me? Because you challenge me. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. You don't even know me. Then let me. The words landed heavy between them. No game. No deflection. Just invitation. Rory's breath caught. Sienna's eyes were locked on hers. No amusement. No calculation. Just heat. And then she stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Come with me, she said. Rory followed. Out the side door. Into a narrow alley lit by a single overhead bulb. The city felt far away here. Like nothing existed but this moment. This breath. This air between them. Sienna turned. Stepped closer. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. And who is that? Rory asked. Untouchable. unmoved, alone. Rory reached up. Her fingers grazed Sienna's cheek. "You're not alone right now." "No," Sienna whispered. "I'm not." And then she kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't polite. It was months of tension, of held-back breath, of glances too long and words too careful, all breaking at once. Sienna's hands were at Rory's waist, pulling her closer, anchoring her. Rory's fingers tangled in her hair, desperate and certain. They kissed like it was inevitable, like it had been waiting to happen since the moment that boardroom door opened. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Sienna's forehead rested against Rory's. "This is dangerous," she said. "So stop." "I don't want to." "Then don't. You'll ruin me. You'll survive me." Sienna kissed her again. Softer this time.
Slower.
But no less intense. "Let me take you home," she said. Rory pulled back just enough to look her in the eye. "You don't get to rescue me, Sienna." "I don't want to rescue you," she said. "I want to keep you." Rory's heart cracked wide open. And for once, she didn't run. Rory didn't sleep that night. Not really. Her body stayed still, curled in the passenger seat of her own car, but her mind wouldn't shut up. The kiss had ignited something in her, too sharp to be just desire, too soft to be pure adrenaline. It had felt like standing on the edge of something irreversible, something that dared her to jump. And for a few wild minutes in the alley behind that little restaurant, she had kissed Sienna Hale like she didn't care what came next. Like the world could burn around them, and it would still be worth it. But now, hours later, the city asleep around her, the warmth of Sienna's mouth long gone, Rory felt something else creeping in. Not regret, but fear. Because this wasn't just a kiss. This wasn't a fling or a fantasy or something she could tuck away and pretend didn't matter. This was real. And dangerous. And exactly the kind of thing that could swallow her whole. She'd made a promise to herself when she lost everything, that she'd never be at someone's mercy again. No more sleeping on couches. No more begging for favors. No more letting someone else decide her worth. And Sienna? Sienna could decide people's worth with a single sentence, with a glance, with a signature. She wasn't just powerful. She was the system. And Rory had spent too long fighting that system to forget how easily it crushed people who didn't play by its rules. So the next morning, she went to work like nothing had happened. She delivered packages, avoided the executive floor, ignored the weight in her chest, didn't check her phone, even though she was sure there was a message waiting. When she passed the receptionist at the top floor later that week, delivering a document Mitch insisted couldn't wait, Sienna wasn't in her office. But her door was open, and Rory didn't look inside. She couldn't. She wouldn't. Not until she figured out what that kiss had meant, and whether she was strong enough to survive the answer. Sienna, for her part, noticed immediately. Rory's silence wasn't loud. It was strategic. She didn't avoid work. She didn't make a scene. She didn't even flinch when they crossed paths in the hallway 3 days later. She just shut the door between them. Quietly. Without explanation. And Sienna felt it like a bruise. It had been years since anyone got close enough to reject her. Most people couldn't afford to. They needed her, feared her, worshipped her from a distance. But Rory hadn't needed permission to step into her orbit. She had just arrived. And now she was gone. Present, but unreachable. Still working in the building, still delivering mail with sharp eyes and tighter posture, and no trace of the girl who had kissed her like she meant it. Sienna didn't understand it. And worse, she couldn't stop thinking about it. That kiss hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't been weakness. It had been the first honest thing she'd done in months. Maybe years. And now Rory was pretending it hadn't happened. Or worse, pretending it hadn't mattered. Sienna tried to bury herself in work. She called meetings she didn't need, read reports she already knew, snapped at people she usually ignored. She told herself it would pass, that she didn't have time for emotional chaos, that she was above this. But the empty space in her office told a different story. The silence in her inbox, the ache in her throat every time she thought about the way Rory had said no without saying anything at all. And then, finally, on a Thursday night, long after everyone else had gone home, Sienna sent a message. It was simple. 3 words.
Talk to me.
She didn't expect a reply, but she left her door open, just in case. It took an hour, then 2. And then, just as she was about to shut down her computer and give up, there was a knock.
Soft.
Hesitant. Sienna looked up. Rory stood in the doorway. Same hoodie, same fire in her eyes. But something about her was quieter now. Wary. This isn't a good idea, Rory said before Sienna could speak. Maybe not, Sienna said. But we already did it. A kiss isn't everything. No, Sienna agreed. But it wasn't nothing. It felt like everything for a minute, Rory said. That's the problem. Why? Because I can't afford to be that girl. The one who loses herself for someone powerful. The one who lets herself believe that affection and power can mix without one poisoning the other. Sienna stood. Slowly. You think I'm trying to control you? I think you don't know how not to. That landed. Sienna didn't argue. You scare me, Rory said. And not just because of what you are, but because of what I feel when I'm around you. Then don't run from it. I'm not running, Rory said. I'm surviving. And what if I'm not here to hurt you? Then I'll still hurt myself eventually, she said. Because I'll want more than this. And I don't know if you can give it. Sienna closed the distance between them. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel. I don't know what I can give you, she said honestly. But I know I don't want this to end here. Rory swallowed. Then give me space. Let me figure out what this is before it swallows me whole. I'll wait, Sienna said. But not forever. I wouldn't respect you if you did. Rory turned to leave. And this time, Sienna didn't stop her. She watched her go. Watched the space between them widen again. But there was something new now. Not silence. Not distance. But a promise. Unspoken. Unfinished. Still burning. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since Rory had kissed Sienna Hale in an alley, since Sienna had looked at her like the rest of the world didn't exist, since Rory had pulled back to breathe, to protect whatever fragile piece of herself she couldn't afford to lose. 3 weeks of quiet glances, of unspoken tension, of walking past each other in hallways with the kind of silence that thundered. Rory kept her head down.
Did her job.
Was promoted to handle internal routing for time-sensitive packages, which meant she had an office now, not a real one but a cubicle with her name on it, and a reason to stay away from the top floor. People talked. Of course they did. Rumors swirled like smoke about how the CEO had gone soft, how the girl from the mailroom must have had something on her, how someone like Rory had ended up untouched when others had been fired for less. But none of them knew what had actually happened. And Rory didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. Except when she was alone. Then she let herself remember the kiss. The way Sienna's hands had gripped her like she didn't trust herself to let go. The way her voice had dropped when she'd said, I want to keep you. And the way Rory had run anyway. Not because she didn't want Sienna, but because she wanted her too much. Sienna, meanwhile, was not doing fine. She showed up to meetings late. Missed deadlines. Snapped at board members for minor mistakes. Her assistant started asking if she was sleeping, if she was eating, if she needed a vacation. She answered with silence. No one dared push further. But inside, Sienna felt herself unraveling. She had built an empire brick by brutal brick, carved her name into steel and glass, taught herself never to need anyone. But Rory had slipped past her defenses like water through a crack. And now everything she touched felt wrong without her. Then, on a Thursday morning that began like any other, everything collapsed. It started with a leak. Not water, information. Someone in legal had sent a confidential draft of the new acquisition proposal to a former employee. That former employee leaked it to the press. By noon, Hale Industries was trending. Stock plummeting. PR scrambling. Lawyers screaming. Sienna was in crisis mode. But not cold. Not focused. She was furious. Not just at the leak, but at the part of herself that hadn't seen it coming. She trusted no one. That had always been her rule. And yet, somewhere in the last month, she'd started letting her guard down. Now, everything felt compromised. She called a meeting. Only 10 people. The core team. And Rory. No one understood why she was included. Not even Rory. But the message came directly from Sienna's assistant. 6:30 p.m. top floor. No excuses. Rory showed up in a button-up shirt someone had given her months ago, still slightly wrinkled but clean. She stood at the edge of the conference room, watching the executives argue, fingers pointed, voices rising. Sienna hadn't spoken yet. She sat at the head of the table, hands steepled, expression unreadable. Then her eyes found Rory, and the room went quiet. "Out," Sienna said. "What?" one VP asked. "You heard me. Everyone out. Except her." They obeyed. No one argued. No one wanted to be the next one cut. And suddenly it was just them. The door closed. Silence thickened. Rory crossed her arms. "You called me here to fire me?" "No. Then why am I here?" "Because I needed someone who isn't lying to my face." Rory hesitated. "You think they're all lying?" "I think most of them are scared. And scared people lie." "And I'm not scared?" "You're scared of the right things." Rory stepped closer. "Like what?"
Me. This.
"Us." "There is no us," Rory said, though her voice lacked conviction. "There was," Sienna said. "Even if it was only for one night. That night wrecked me." "It wrecked me too. You didn't show it." "I don't know how."
Then learn, Rory snapped.
"Because I can't keep pretending I don't want you. But I won't survive being consumed by you either." "I don't want to consume you," Sienna said. "I want to be near you. That's all I know." Rory's heart cracked. Her body was already moving. And then, before either of them could speak again, Rory reached for her. Not just physically. Emotionally. She crossed the last inches between them, hands grabbing Sienna's face like she'd been holding back for weeks. Their mouths met hard. This kiss was different. Not the first time, not cautious or curious. This was raw.
Desperate. Hungry.
Like they had both tried to live without it and failed miserably. Sienna pushed her against the wall of the conference room, lips trailing heat down her jaw, hands sliding under Rory's shirt with reverence and urgency. "I missed you," she whispered, voice rough. "Don't say that," Rory said, breathless. "Say you tried to forget me and couldn't." "I tried. And you haunt me." Rory kissed her again, deeper this time, until they were both shaking. And then they stopped.
Slowly.
Letting air fill the space between them again. "This isn't going to be easy," Rory said. "No," Sienna agreed. "But I don't want easy." "What do you want?"
You. Just you.
"Even if it ruins everything." Rory closed her eyes. "It won't ruin me. How do you know?" "Because this time I'm walking toward it with my eyes open." Sienna touched her face. "Then stay." "For tonight?" "For as long as you'll let me." And Rory did. She stayed. Not because it was safe, but because it was real. Rory didn't expect to feel lighter. She thought sleeping with Sienna would make everything more complicated, more dangerous, more tangled in power and doubt, and the thousand things she didn't know how to say. But the truth was simpler. She felt weightless. Not because the world around them had changed, if anything, the tension at Hale Industries had only gotten thicker, but because for the first time in months, she wasn't lying to herself. She had wanted Sienna. Wanted her in ways that scared her. In ways that burned. And now she knew Sienna wanted her back. Not as a curiosity.
Not as a distraction.
As something real. Still, reality had a way of creeping back in. And at Hale, reality came with whispers. The morning after their night in the conference room, Rory walked through the glass doors of the building with her heart still echoing the way Sienna had touched her.
But she also felt the shift.
The pause in conversation when she entered a room. The sideways glances. The sudden kindness from people who had ignored her for weeks. Something was different. And it wasn't just in her head. By lunchtime she knew why. A text from one of the interns she'd helped last week. Someone saw you leave the top floor last night. Alone.
Late.
People are talking. Rory stared at the message, then deleted it. Her hands didn't stop shaking. She tried to focus on work. Packages.
Routing.
Spreadsheets she barely understood, but had started learning out of sheer stubbornness. But it all felt hollow, with the air shifting around her. Like everyone was waiting for her to slip. Like the building itself could sense it, this forbidden, fragile thing between her and the woman whose name was printed on every wall. At 3 p.m., she passed Sienna in the corridor outside operations. They didn't touch.
Didn't speak.
But their eyes met.
And that was enough.
There was heat in that look. And something darker, too. Possessiveness.
Concern.
Vulnerability. Later, in the break room, two assistants whispered near the coffee machine. Did you hear? The CEO's been different lately. Like, distracted. Wonder what changed. Someone said it's the girl from the mailroom. Please. She's nobody. She was a nobody last night. Rory didn't flinch. She poured her tea, stirred it calmly, and walked out. But her pulse was pounding. That night, Sienna texted, "Come up." Rory didn't reply. But at 7:10 p.m., she stepped into the elevator. The door to Sienna's office was open again. The city glowed behind her, turning her silhouette into something out of a fever dream. Sienna didn't smile. They know. Rory nodded.
Some of them suspect.
Some are just hoping it's true, so they have something to gossip about. And you? I don't care about gossip, but you care about exposure. I care about being used against you, Rory said. About becoming a weakness. Sienna stepped forward. You're not a weakness. Then what am I? The only thing that feels real right now. That shut Rory up. Sienna walked to her.
Slowly.
Deliberately. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them whisper. And when the board finds out, they'll do what boards always do. Calculate risk. Weigh options. Pretend they're in control. And what will you do? Sienna reached out, fingers tracing Rory's wrist. I'll tell them I make my own decisions. And if they don't like it, they're welcome to try replacing me. Rory laughed softly, bitter and touched all at once. God, you really don't scare easy, do you? Only when it matters. Does this matter? More than anything I've built. Rory stepped closer. I don't want to hide, but I don't want to be your scandal either. Then be my equal. I don't know how to do that when everyone sees me as less. Then show them who you are, Sienna said. Not who they think you are. Who you've always been. And who's that? Sienna kissed her. Soft. Slow. The woman who walked into my boardroom and made me forget how to breathe. Rory melted. Just a little. Enough. They didn't sleep together that night. Not because they didn't want to, but because the world outside was already on fire, and they needed to be still. Needed to remind each other that this wasn't just desire. It was something slower. Deeper. Maybe even dangerous in a new way. The next day, Rory's cubicle had flowers. No card. Just a quiet gesture. The office exploded with whispers. And Rory, for the first time, smiled and didn't care. But behind the scenes, the pressure mounted. HR sent an email flagged confidential. The board requested a private conversation with Sienna. A senior partner from legal expressed concerns. And somewhere deep inside the building, someone started watching Rory a little too closely. Waiting for a reason. For an excuse. For a crack. Sienna was aware of it. All of it. And she was ready. But Rory? Rory was still learning how to carry fire without burning everything down. And the heat was rising. It started with a memo. Internal. Unassuming. A short note about compliance concerns sent from legal to HR, copied to two senior executives. The kind of email most employees never see, never hear about. But this one mentioned a name. Rory Jones. The wording was vague. Inappropriate conduct, breach of internal confidentiality protocol, pending investigation. Rory didn't find out until 11:42 a.m., when Mitch came to her cubicle with a face full of worry and a mouth full of nothing. They're looking into something, he said. What something? No one's saying, but you should be careful. I've done nothing wrong. That's not always what matters here. The ground shifted beneath her. Not in a dramatic way, no sirens, no meetings, no confrontation. Just the slow, crawling dread of a noose being tied in some unseen boardroom. She stood up.
Walked.
Not to hide, not to run, to find out what they thought they knew. When she reached HR, she asked direct questions. Got indirect answers. It's not personal, Miss Jones. You're accusing me of something. We're reviewing a pattern of access logs and correspondence. I deliver packages. What kind of correspondence am I not allowed to touch? It's not about what you're allowed to touch. It's about optics. Rory didn't yell.
She didn't beg.
She walked out, straight to the elevator, to the top floor,
To Sienna.
But when she got there, Sienna wasn't alone. A member of the board, Angela Lorenz, was already in her office. Rory froze at the threshold. Sienna looked up. Their eyes locked. And for a moment, the room was just them. Then Sienna's voice, calm, clipped, professional. Come in, Miss Jones. Angela turned, her smile thin. Ah, the rising star. Rory stepped forward. Am I interrupting? Not at all, Angela said, standing. We were just discussing the importance of clear boundaries in a professional setting. Interesting timing, Rory said, considering someone seems to be using boundaries as a weapon. Rory, Sienna began, but Rory held up a hand.
No.
Let's not pretend this is subtle. Someone is trying to discredit me. Not because I've done anything wrong, but because I matter to you. Angela's expression didn't change. If you're implying a personal relationship is affecting the integrity of this workplace, I'm not implying. Rory cut in. I'm stating. You don't like that Sienna sees something in me. That she didn't ask your permission to feel it. Silence. Then Sienna rose. Rory, wait outside. No, please. Rory's jaw clenched. Then she nodded, stepped back, closed the door, and waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. Then the door opened. Angela left without a word. Sienna leaned in the frame, eyes darker than usual. Come in. Rory stepped in. They're trying to bury me. They're trying to bury me through you. So what now? Now I make it very clear that I don't bury. And me? You'll stand with me. Or you won't. But you won't be alone. They'll keep digging. Let them. I'll give them nothing. Unless they find something. There is nothing to find. Sienna walked around her desk. Unless you're hiding something? I'm not the one with board seats and PR contracts. No, Sienna said, voice soft. You're the one with courage. Rory sat down, let out a breath. What if this gets worse? Then we fight. Together. That sounds like something people say before it all falls apart. It might fall apart anyway. And you're okay with that? Sienna sat across from her. I'm not okay, but I'm not afraid either. Rory looked at her. Really looked. Past the power. Past the control. Past the perfect hair and the stone-cut confidence. And saw a woman who had spent so long building an empire that she forgot how to trust anyone who hadn't helped her build it. I don't want to be your weak spot, Rory whispered. You're not. You're the only part of me that feels strong lately. Rory stood, walked to the window. The city looked different from here. Always had. Like a puzzle someone else solved before she had a chance to play. I'm going to fix this, she said. I'm going to show them they can't silence me.
How?
By being smarter than them. Louder.
Cleaner.
I know how to survive. I've done it with nothing. You think I can't do it now with you in my corner? Sienna smiled. You're terrifying. You like that. I really do. The next day, Rory filed an internal statement. She didn't ask Sienna for permission. She wrote it herself. It was clear.
Bold.
Unapologetic. She laid out every step of her job, every assignment, every access point. She named names, quoted timestamps, challenged the implication that her presence was suspicious just because of her past or her proximity to power. She didn't mention the relationship, but she didn't deny it either. The building held its breath. Some people applauded her. quietly. A few started asking if she was going to apply for a permanent coordinator position. Others avoided eye contact. But no one called her just the mailroom girl again. A week passed. The internal review ended. The accusations disappeared. The memo was retracted. Not publicly. But Rory knew. And so did Sienna. One night, back in that office, Sienna closed the door and kissed her like she hadn't since that first time. Not desperate. Not angry. Just grateful. You saved yourself, Sienna said. You gave me room to do it. You didn't need my permission. But I needed to know I mattered. Sienna took her hand. You do. Too much. Then let's not let them take this from us. They'll try. Let them. And they did. But Rory didn't break. Because now the world saw her not as an accident, but as a force. And Sienna? Sienna saw her as something rarer still. As hers. The invitation was delivered by hand. Cream-colored envelope. Heavy stock. Embossed in gold with the Hale Industries logo in the corner. Inside, a single sentence in neat, cold type. You are formally invited to the annual Hale Industries Winter Gala. Below, the dress code. The location. The date, 10 days away. No RSVP required. Rory stared at it for a long time. The irony was almost cruel. Just 6 months ago, she had been living out of her car, scraping change for coffee and sneaking into public bathrooms to stay clean. Now, she was being asked to attend a black tie event in a building where the chandeliers probably cost more than her entire college debt. And she knew exactly who had made sure that invitation found its way to her desk. Sienna hadn't mentioned the gala. Not once. But Rory had seen the whispers. The shift in atmosphere. The way executive assistants suddenly started talking in lower voices. The way tailors came in and out of the building with garment bags. Sienna wasn't avoiding the subject. She was waiting, letting Rory decide what this night would mean. When Rory finally knocked on the office door that evening, Sienna didn't look up right away. She was reviewing contracts, her posture all steel and stillness. Then she saw the envelope in Rory's hand, and said nothing. Rory closed the door. You want me there? Do you? That's not an answer. Sienna set the papers aside. You've earned your place in that room, Rory. They just haven't realized it yet. And if they don't want to, then we remind them who gets to decide who belongs. Rory took a breath. You'll be there. Of course. But you'll be expected to act like the woman you've always been. And you'll be expected to disappear into the wallpaper. I don't like disappearing. You never have. Sienna stood, walked around the desk. Come as you are. Or don't come at all. But don't come pretending you owe them silence. Rory nodded, and walked out with her heart pounding. 10 days passed faster than she thought. And suddenly, it was gala night. The building had been transformed. The lobby dressed in silver and black. Strings of lights like constellations, champagne flutes carried on trays, music drifting from a string quartet. Rory stood just outside the main ballroom, wearing the only dress she had borrowed from an old friend, a deep navy that hugged her in all the right places, modest but confident, the neckline sharp, the hem just long enough to feel elegant. She didn't have heels. She wore boots, polished, clean, unapologetic. And when she stepped into the room, the world stilled. People turned. Not immediately. Not obviously.
But subtly.
Executives noticed. Assistants whispered. And at the far end of the room, standing in front of the tall, arched windows like she'd been sculpted into place, was Sienna. Wearing black. Perfectly tailored. Hair pinned back. Eyes already locked on Rory, like no one else existed. They didn't move to each other. Not at first. The game was one of control, of poise. But Rory could feel the air thicken around her. Every step toward the center of the room felt like stepping into something irreversible. Rory Jones, someone said behind her. She turned. It was Angela Lorenz. Of course. Didn't expect to see you here, she continued, sipping her champagne. Most entry-level employees don't attend the gala. Rory smiled. Most CEOs don't invite them personally either. Angela's smile tightened. Don't mistake inclusion for approval. Don't mistake your discomfort for policy. Careful, Miss Jones. Always. Rory walked away. And finally, towards Sienna. They met in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by hundreds of bodies, but it might as well have been an empty room. You look, Sienna began, then stopped. Rory raised an eyebrow. Look. Unshakable. I feel like I might throw up. Still unshakable. Sienna's hand didn't reach for hers, but her voice dropped. You being here, it says everything. What does it say? That I'm not hiding anymore. Good, Rory whispered. Because I'm done hiding too. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Not here. But the space between them crackled with the promise of it. The room moved around them. Speeches were made. Toasts raised. Deals hinted at in corners. But the tension between Rory and Sienna only deepened. Then came the first dance. A tradition. Usually reserved for the CEO and their chosen guest of honor. The floor cleared. The quartet began to play. And Sienna walked to the center. Alone. Then she turned. Held out a hand. Miss Jones. A murmur swept through the crowd. Rory's breath hitched. But she stepped forward. Took the hand. Let herself be led. The music swelled. Sienna's hand on her waist. Rory's on her shoulder. Their bodies close. The room held its breath. And the world tipped. They danced. Not perfectly. Not polished. But present. Fierce. Alive. And when the song ended, the applause was hesitant. Scattered. But it came. And Rory leaned in, close enough that only Sienna could hear. So much for subtlety. Subtlety was never going to be enough. That night, when they returned to the building, alone, quiet, exhausted, Rory looked at her and said, They saw us. They'll keep seeing us. You okay with that? Are you? Rory smiled. I'm okay if I get to keep looking at you too. And Sienna pulled her in. No crowd. No pressure. Just them. And this time, the kiss was not a secret. It was a promise. Rory hadn't expected fame. Not real fame, not flashing camera fame, but whatever strange, coiled version of it lived inside the upper echelons of corporate mythology. But after the gala, her name became a currency. Not on billboards, not in newspapers, but whispered, passed along emails, dropped in boardrooms and interviews with a particular tone, half curiosity, half suspicion. The mailroom girl who danced with the CEO. The one she kissed. The one she chose. The stories multiplied. Some painted Rory as a disruptor, a Cinderella in combat boots. Others as a manipulator, the calculated player who seduced power. And a few, the cruelest ones, reduced her to a risk. A liability Sienna couldn't see clearly anymore. None of them bothered Rory as much as they should have. What bothered her was the way people treated her differently. Invitations started arriving. Coffee chats with division heads. Mentorship opportunities. Networking events, she was told, would be great for your visibility. She didn't ask for any of it. And yet it kept coming. As if being seen on Sienna's arm was a key she hadn't realized she was carrying. At first, she brought it to Sienna. Told her everything. Laughed about the absurdity of it. But Sienna didn't laugh. She listened. She frowned. She made phone calls that ended with things being handled. And that's when Rory started to feel it. The tightening. The invisible hand trying to protect her, guide her, shield her from what? From the world? From herself? She didn't want protection. She wanted freedom. One afternoon, she walked into Sienna's office and found a new desk being assembled just outside the door. What's this? Rory asked the facilities manager. New position, he shrugged. Internal liaison. Your name's on the request. She froze. Turned. Marched into the office. Sienna looked up, calm as ever. Is this some kind of promotion? Rory asked. It's a step up, Sienna replied. You've earned it. I didn't apply for it. I created it. Why? Because it gives you access. Influence. A way to grow. Under your shadow? Sienna stiffened. Is that how you see this? You didn't ask me what I wanted. I thought I was giving you power. You were giving me a leash. Silence fell. Heavy. Sienna rose, slowly. Do you think I want to control you? I think you don't know how not to. I'm trying to make space for you. Then let me choose how I use it. What do you want, Rory? I want to matter without being a story you crafted. I want to be your partner, not your project. Sienna looked at her, truly looked, and something in her broke. Not with anger, but with grief. I didn't mean to make you feel small.
You didn't, Rory said.
But the world does. And if we're not careful, I'll disappear into the version of me they want you to love. Sienna crossed the room, stopped inches from her. I love you now, not some version. Rory's throat tightened. Then trust me enough to let me rise without you pulling the strings. Sienna nodded.
All right.
Then you tell me what's next. And Rory did. She turned down the liaison role, applied quietly for a junior project manager position, one that had nothing to do with Sienna's office. She started learning things outside the walls of Hale, took meetings with people who didn't care who she was dating, built something of her own. Sienna watched from a distance. Hurt sometimes.
Proud, always. They still spent nights together.
Shared coffee. Shared silence. Shared skin and breath and vulnerability. But Rory never moved into her apartment. Never asked for favors. Never let herself stop choosing. Until one day, an article ran in a mid-level tech publication. A piece on women disrupting internal systems from the inside. Rory's name was listed. Not as CEO's girlfriend, but as one to watch. When Sienna read it, she sent no flowers. No congratulations. She walked into Rory's office, her real one now, across the building, and kissed her in front of 2 interns and a marketing assistant. You did this, she said, without me. That was the point, Rory said. And I still want you anyway. You think that'll ever change?
No.
But now I know I'd survive it if it did. That night when they made love, it was different. Not tentative. Not desperate. But anchored. Rory touched her like a woman who knew she had everything to lose, and still chose this. Sienna held her like someone who no longer needed to possess to keep. In the dark, Sienna whispered, "You terrify me." Rory smiled against her skin. You needed to be terrified.
Why?
Because you built a kingdom and forgot how to let anyone walk in without bowing first. And you. I'm not here to bow. What are you here to do?
Stay.
But only if I can stay standing. Sienna pulled her closer. Then stand with me. And Rory did. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she finally knew she could go anywhere and still chose her. The first time Rory saw the article, it hadn't even been published.
It was a draft.
Slid to her in a sealed envelope by someone she barely knew, one of the newer comms assistants, eyes darting like he was handing over a ticking bomb. You didn't get this from me, he said. And you didn't read it. Then he disappeared into the hallway. Rory sat with it in her lap for 10 minutes before opening it. The headline was bold. Cold. The past Sienna Hale paid to erase. Below, a byline she recognized, Carrie Longman. Known for exposés. Precise, ruthless, surgical. The first few paragraphs were general. A woman with power. Secrets buried. But by the middle of the piece, it got specific. Detailed. 10 years ago. A failed startup no one talked about anymore. A former partner. A lawsuit settled out of court. Non-disclosure agreements. Allegations of manipulation. One quote, anonymous but damning. She used people to climb, then cut them off. She doesn't build alone. She just builds better walls. And then, a final paragraph, a suggestion that sources were recently re-engaging. That Hale Industries wasn't untouchable anymore. Rory closed the folder and stared at the wall for a long time. Not because she believed it. Sienna was many things, but not careless, not cruel, but because she knew what this would mean. The story wasn't about the past. It was about blood. Fanna's. And hers. By midnight, she was in Sienna's apartment. Not because she'd been invited. Because she had a key. Because something deeper than logic told her this wasn't something to text about. Sienna was at the window, barefoot in a robe, hair loose. She turned when Rory entered. said nothing, just watched. Rory held up the folder. How much of this is true? Sienna's face didn't shift. Not even a flinch. Enough that I know what you read. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I buried it for a reason. And you thought it wouldn't find you? I thought it wouldn't matter to you.
It doesn't, Rory said.
But it matters to them. To the world. And now it's going to matter to me whether I want it to or not. Sienna moved. Slow. Careful. I built myself out of nothing. I clawed my way through circles that never wanted me in them. I made decisions I regret. But I never lied about who I was. You just made sure no one else could tell the story. Because they never told it fairly. Then tell it now. To you? To everyone. They won't listen. They'll listen to me. Sienna blinked. What? If I tell them what kind of person you are now, maybe they'll see the difference. You do that. I'd do anything to protect you. Even if it costs you everything you've built? Rory hesitated. That's not fair. It's the truth. Then give me something to hold on to. Something to prove you're not the woman in that article. You already know I'm not. But they don't. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time, Rory saw her break. Not fully. Not loudly. Just a slow collapse inward. I don't want you to fight for me, Rory. Too late. I don't want you to burn for me. Then stop standing in the fire alone. Silence.
Thick.
Then Sienna said, they're going to turn this into a war. Then we fight on the same side. You'll be dragged through it. I've been through worse. I can make it go away. By paying someone off again? That hit. Sienna flinched. You think I still operate like that? I think the temptation never left you. And you think you're above it? No, Rory said softly. I think I'm beside you, but not beneath you. Sienna looked up. Something new in her eyes. Something raw. You're not just beside me. You're the only one who sees me clearly. Then let me help. The next day, the article leaked. Not the draft, the polished final version. With dates, emails, screenshots. No smoking gun. But enough to sting. Enough to raise questions. The board panicked. PR teams scrambled. Shareholders called emergency meetings. Rory released her own statement. She didn't defend Sienna's past. She defended her present. Talked about the woman she worked with now. The woman who made space. Who listened. Who learned. She spoke to the press without permission. And she didn't ask for forgiveness. Internally, it caused an earthquake. But outside, people listened. The narrative didn't vanish. But it shifted. Humanized. Complicated. And then, something no one expected. Carrie Longman published a follow-up. A retraction. Not of the facts, but of the framing. Maybe she was ruthless. But maybe she also changed. Maybe power and evolution aren't mutually exclusive. Sienna called Rory that night. Didn't say thank you. Just said, you saved me. Rory replied, no. You saved yourself. I just reminded them you were worth saving. Sienna asked her to come over. Rory did. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Sienna whispered, I'm afraid you'll hate me one day. When you see all of it. I've seen more than you realize, Rory said. And I've never loved you more than I do right now. Sienna cried. Quietly. Rory held her. Fiercely. That night, there was no sex. No kiss. Just arms around each other. And the shared understanding that love wasn't about perfection. It was about staying. Even when it hurt. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m., before the city woke, before coffee brewed, before either of them had fully opened their eyes. Rory stirred first. Sienna's phone buzzed on the nightstand.
Once. Twice. 3 times.
Then silence. She didn't move. Just buried her face in Rory's neck. But something in the weight of that silence felt different. Heavier. Rory reached over, grabbed the phone, and blinked at the screen. One subject line. From the Hale board. Urgent. Merger proposal finalized. London HQ. Sienna opened her eyes slowly, sensing the shift in Rory's body. What is it? Rory handed her the phone. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Sienna read the email.
Once.
Then again. Then sat up. Rory remained silent. She knew better than to speak too soon. They approved it, Sienna said, voice low. It's happening. When? The full integration begins in 4 months. But I'd need to start transition planning next month. And you'd move. Sienna didn't answer right away. She stood, pulled on a robe, and walked to the window like she always did when she needed to think. Rory sat up, watching her. Would you move? She repeated. It's not optional. If I say yes to the merger, I'd be expected to oversee the launch in person. At least for the first year. Maybe more. Rory nodded slowly. That's not just a business trip. No, that's a life. Yes. The word landed between them like a knife. Rory got up, crossed the room. Why didn't you tell me this was a possibility? Because I didn't want to make a choice before I had to. But now you do. Sienna turned to face her. I want this, Rory. Professionally, it's everything I've worked for. And personally? Personally, I don't know how to picture that city without you in it. Rory's throat tightened. Then say it. Say what? That you want me to go. I can't ask you to give up what you're building here. But you want to. Sienna looked like she might break. I want both. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? We decide. Together. What this love looks like when it's not easy. When it costs us something. What do you want, Rory? I want to be able to say no and still have you love me. Always. I want to be able to say yes and not feel like I'm disappearing. You wouldn't be. Are you sure? Sienna walked to her. You wouldn't disappear. Not in London. Not anywhere. You'd be the only thing keeping me grounded. And what would I be doing while you're rebuilding an empire across the ocean? Whatever you want. That's not a plan, Sienna. That's a fantasy. Then make it real. With me. Rory stepped back. I have a team now. People who count on me. Projects that finally have my name on them. I'm not the girl from the mailroom anymore. I built something too. I know. So what do? We talk. We make a plan. Or we don't. And if I say no, then I go. And I try not to fall apart. And if I say yes, then we try to do the impossible again. Silence stretched between them. Not cold. Not angry. Just wide. Heavy. Full of 100 possibilities. That night, they didn't sleep. They talked. Curled into each other like the gravity between them might snap if they pulled too far apart. Rory asked questions. Sienna gave honest answers. They argued.
Cried. Laughed.
Kissed like it might be the last time. And by morning, Rory said, I'll visit. But I'm not moving. Not yet. Sienna nodded. Then I'll come back. As often as I can. And we'll see. We'll see. We're not ending, Rory whispered. We're evolving. Sienna smiled, pained and proud all at once. You're still terrifying. And you still like it. I love it. I love you. I love you too. And in that moment, they weren't CEO and former mailroom girl. They weren't London and New York. They were just two women holding on to something fragile and burning, and impossibly worth it. Sienna left for London 3 weeks later. Rory took her to the airport. No drama. No tears. Just a kiss that said everything words couldn't. Don't build walls there, Rory said. Only windows. So I can see you. So you remember how much light you deserve. And Sienna left. And Rory stayed. And the world kept moving. But neither of them let go. The first week was all messages. Photos of coffee cups with their names scribbled on them. Video calls stolen between meetings. Rory waking up early just to see Sienna before she headed into another 12-hour day across the ocean. They were soft.
Warm.
Hopeful. The second week was harder. Missed calls. Rescheduled video chats. Sienna sounded tired, her voice thinner, stretched. Rory kept telling herself it was temporary. That transitions were always like this. That London was just another test. But by the end of the third week, she could feel it, an ache she couldn't place. A space forming. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just absence. Then came the text from Sienna. Sorry. Late dinner.
Can't talk tonight.
Miss you. Rory stared at the screen for a long time. Typed it's okay. I love you, then deleted it. Typed it again. Deleted it again. She sent nothing. The next morning, there was no reply. At Hale, New York, Rory kept herself busy. The project team trusted her now. She was building something real. A platform for younger hires to be mentored by mid-level leads. It was being noticed.
Even praised.
And still, every success felt slightly hollow without Sienna to share it with. One night, at a networking event, someone asked, "So, is it true? You're still dating her?" Rory smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yes. Long distance? That must be hard. It is. Well, the woman said, raising her glass, good luck keeping her. People like Sienna don't exactly wait around. Rory laughed politely, but something inside her cracked. In London, Sienna wasn't lonely. Not the way Rory was. She was surrounded by new faces, constant motion. And one of those faces belonged to Elise. French-born, Oxford-trained. A partner in the firm they were merging with. Bright, bold, infuriatingly confident. Elise challenged Sienna in meetings. Made her laugh in elevators. Knew when to push and when to shut up. And most dangerously, never once asked about Rory. One afternoon, after a brutal call with legal, Elise leaned against Sienna's office door. You look like you need a drink. I look like I need a firing squad. Elise smiled. Well, I'm the next best thing.
Come on.
You've earned an hour. Sienna hesitated, then followed. At the bar, Elise ordered for both of them. Still whiskey? How did you know? Read it in your posture. You're very observant. Only when I want to be. The flirtation was thinly veiled. Sienna didn't encourage it, but she didn't shut it down either. When the third drink arrived, she finally said, I'm seeing someone. I know. She's in New York. Must be lonely. It is. You don't strike me as the type who waits. Sienna met her gaze. I never used to be. And now I am. Elise leaned back, cool and unreadable. Then I hope she's worth it. Sienna didn't answer. Because of course she was. But still, she didn't stop Elise from walking her to her flat. Didn't stop her from brushing her hand against her arm. Didn't stop the moment from stretching just long enough to feel like a betrayal. Back in New York, Rory felt it. Not through messages or calls, but through the silence. That instinctive, invisible thread between them had frayed. She didn't know how.
She didn't know when.
But she knew. When Sienna finally called, Rory was distant. Hey, Sienna said. Hi. I miss you. You're busy. That doesn't mean I don't miss you. It means you don't have time to show it. Sienna exhaled. Rory, is there someone else? No, but there could be. Silence. I haven't crossed any lines. That's not what I asked. There's a woman.
Elise.
She's intense. But it's nothing. Not yet. Rory. I just needed you to say it. So I know I'm not crazy. You're not. Do you want me to come? I can't ask you to. That's not what I said. Yes, Sienna said. Voice breaking. Yes, I want you here. Then say it like it's not guilt. Say it like you love me. I love you. Then fight for us. I'm trying. Try harder. That night, Rory cried. Not because she'd lost Sienna, but because for the first time, she wasn't sure they'd survive what came next. Not distance. Not timing. But the quiet erosion of closeness. The way love didn't explode, it faded. Slowly. Gently. Like light leaving a room. But she still believed. And belief, she reminded herself, was a choice. One she would keep making. Until there was nothing left to fight for, or everything to win back. The plane landed at 5:13 a.m. London was quiet, still wrapped in fog, the city barely breathing. Rory didn't bring much, just one small suitcase, her passport, and a heart half ripped open. She hadn't told Sienna she was coming. Every part of her ached with the risk of it. But some part deeper, older, louder whispered that she couldn't just sit in New York anymore, waiting for silence to answer what love hadn't finished saying. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a speech. She only had a cab driver with a tired smile, a London street soaked in soft rain, and the address Sienna once gave her, just in case. Rory stood outside the building for 10 minutes, looked up at the windows. Imagine Sienna in one of them, asleep or maybe already awake, combing through emails and forgetting to breathe. And then she walked in. The doorman blinked, recognized her. "Miss Jones, I'm here for Sienna Hale. She didn't say you were coming. She doesn't know. She's not expecting visitors." Rory lifted her chin. "She will want to see me." A pause. Then a small nod. The elevator ride was silent. The hallway was longer than she remembered. Her feet moved before her heart could catch up. 3 knocks. The door opened. And there she was. Sienna. Barefoot. In a black tank and loose pants. Hair mussed. Eyes wide. Rory. Rory swallowed. "Hi."
A beat.
Then Sienna stepped back. "Come in." Rory walked inside. The flat smelled like bergamot and expensive ink. Books stacked in corners. Laptop open on the dining table. A half-empty whiskey glass beside it. "You weren't sleeping," Rory said. "I haven't slept right since you left. I shouldn't have waited so long. I should have asked you to come sooner." Rory turned. "I felt you slipping away." "I felt it too. And Elise. She's noise. You let her get close. Not the way you think, but enough that I hated myself for it." "I hated it too." Sienna crossed the room slowly. Stopped inches away. "I didn't forget you. But you didn't fight for me either. I thought if I held on too tight, you'd resent me. I would have stayed if you'd just said you wanted me to. I want you. Say it like it's now. Not like it's a memory." Sienna touched her face. "I want you here. With me. Not as something I protect. Not as someone I owe. But as the only person I've ever loved who makes me want to be better, not just bigger." Rory's throat closed. "I didn't come here to make you choose. You didn't come here to run either. I came to remind you." "Of what?" "That I'm still here. And I still want this. But only if we build something together. Not in my shadow. And not with me behind." Sienna's voice cracked. "I don't want to do this without you." "Then don't." "What about New York? I can split my time. And your job. I'll find a way. And us." Rory leaned in. "We start again. Not because we failed, but because we're different now. We've grown. Let's meet each other there." Sienna's lips brushed hers.
Soft. Trembling.
And then the kiss deepened, pulling months of silence and ache and hunger into a single breathless promise. They broke apart, foreheads pressed. Sienna whispered, "You're not the girl from the mailroom anymore." Rory smiled. "And you're not the woman who thought she had to do it all alone." Are we still impossible? We're improbable, but not impossible. So what now? We live like people who chose each other twice. And if it gets hard again, then we fight again, and again, until it stops being a fight and starts being our life. Sienna exhaled. "Move in." Rory blinked. "What?" "Move in. Not because I need you here, but because I want you here. Ask me again after coffee. Coward. Control freak. I missed you. Don't ever stop saying it. Then don't give me a reason to." That morning, they sat on the floor and drank tea. Sienna read Rory her worst press emails. Rory read her notes for a new mentorship program she wanted to pitch to London branches. They laughed.
Argued.
Kissed between mouthfuls of toast. And when Rory finally dozed off on Sienna's shoulder, Sienna didn't reach for her phone. She didn't check emails. She didn't think about numbers or growth or board meetings. She just watched her sleep and thought, this is the empire I was always supposed to build. Not in square footage, not in margins, but in love that scared her, in partnership that didn't shrink, in a girl who once walked into her boardroom by accident and stayed by choice. Thank you so much for being here and for believing in this channel. If you feel in your heart, you can donate with super thanks so I can focus more and more on this project. Your support helps me keep creating these love stories and bringing them to life for you. See you in the next video.